Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is A.B. Timothy. I am your host for the Keeping the Beacon Lit podcast. This is a weekly writers podcast by writers for writers and artists more generally. If you are a creative of any kind, welcome to the show. We'd love to have you. Just a bit of housekeeping to start the show. If you're interested in being on the show to talk about your book, your art project, or just general creativity and inspiration, down below you'll find a link to a Google form where you can apply to be on the show. It's more than likely I'll accept you, but there are some conditions. So go ahead and fill that out if you're a creative and want to talk about the things you love and the things you're creative about. I'd love to have you on the show. Also, below, you'll find a link to the Kickstarter, which has now been live for a week if you're watching this after the fact, or is going live tomorrow if you're watching this live with us on X. And that will be full of exciting things to talk about on my next show and potentially on a special live on X sometime this next week. We will see. It's where you can go and support my independent journey as an author. I have been writing for close to 13 years, and I have loved every step of the journey. But for a long time, I was stuck in the rejection loop of write a book, send it off to agents, and get rejected, which is a natural loop that lots of authors go through. But I got sick and tired of waiting for someone to realize what I had to show. And so, with the encouragement of others on YouTube and on X, I have decided to take the independent route and publish myself. I am technically being published by an LLC known as the Beacon Press LLC, and I'm very excited to be published by them. They are a fantastic company, and they're actually the ones hosting the Kickstarter. It is still an independent foundation, an independent press, and it is helping independent artists and authors pursue their dream of doing art full time. I've actually commissioned several pieces of art, including the one that you've likely seen on the Kickstarter page from a local friend of mine here in Tucson who is an independent artist himself. And so not only will it be helping me continue my artistic journey and dreams, it will also be helping other independent artists continue their artistic journeys and dreams. So do take note of that Kickstarter. The most expensive tier, as you'll find if you go to the Kickstarter link below, is less than the price of a AAA game is currently. So it's worth your time. It's pretty cheap, and I think you will really enjoy the story. So, moving on from that, this is the Keeping the Beacon Lit podcast. It is a podcast all about keeping our creative beacons lit as artists. A summer ago, here in Tucson, we had the Tucson Comic-Con, and there I attended a panel hosted by a friend of mine called Keeping the Beacon Lit. And as you may have been able to tell, I kind of stole the idea and I've been running with it ever since. The whole concept of the show and of having artists on and of having you be able to listen there at home is to inspire you and to help kindle the fire inside of you, and all of that with the dream that it won't die. I've seen too many times light of creativity die in the eyes of people that I know personally. They've had ideas, they've had concepts, they've had great story ideas, and just never went anywhere with it. They couldn't find the time, or they weren't motivated enough, or some other excuse or happenings. And so they fell by the wayside, and I'm one of the last ones standing. I've had a completely, well, they would call themselves non-creative, but they are creative people. Not artist friends of mine, I'll call them that, who have come up with some of the most fascinating story concepts in my mind. Like, while they were telling me the story concept, I could see the vision. I could read the book in my mind, as it were. And then they just kind of never went anywhere with it. They never did anything with it. They didn't have the desire or motivation to keep going, which is sad. It's really sad to see stories and ideas fall to the wayside when that's who we are as humans. Collectively, we are the collection of the stories that comprise us. I am, as a person, I am my memories, and my memories are stories, but lots of those memories are made up of stories other people have told me, from the fictitious old wives' tales that I've heard throughout my years, or the sort of folk tale-ish stories told to me by my grandfather when I was young. All of these things have developed me into the artist I am today and the storyteller I am today, along with all of the books that I have read or am reading. And that should be where you are, I believe, as someone who is pursuing their dream of the arts and pursuing their creative fire, because that creative fire is what makes us human. If we turn off the creative fire, if we just let other things do our thinking for us, if we let these robots or these computer farms in insert third world country here do our thinking for us and do our creating for us, then we will cease to be human. We will become something else. And I know some people want us to become post-human, but that's not me. I am a humanist, not in the cringe like atheist sort of sense, but in the really cool and based imago Dei sense.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to know. So this is the spring special, and part of spring is bringing new life to things and seeing things reborn and kind of birthing from the earth. And that's why I'm talking so much, and why this preamble is probably going to be a bit longer than my normal preambles, is because I want to give this podcast new life, to give this dream of mine to help other dreams come true new life. And so that's what I'm doing. And here in spring, that is the purpose of spring, is to bring new life to things. I can see outside my window currently rosebuds blooming on the bush outside, and that's, even though technically, and you can crucify me in the comments later if you'd like, it isn't spring yet. I get that. But here in Tucson, it might as well be spring. Like, winter lasts for a week if we're lucky, and then we get spring. So yeah, I'm dealing with a lot of spring-esque things, like pollen coming off the trees and rosebuds outside and 90-degree
If you're getting
weather.
pollen, that's spring. That's if you're getting
Right,
pollen, that's
yeah,
spring to me.
Exactly. That's exactly where my mind is too. So, right. Speaking of, he's brought himself up a couple of times. My good friend Matt C. Krell is joining us today. He is a speculative fiction author working on a sci-fi which has the potential to be one of the most impressive sci-fis I've ever read, if it comes to fruition, which that's the whole point of this show, is to keep that beacon lit and to keep that fire going. And so if he ever tells me one day, or if he ever posts on X that he's given up or that he's going to stop writing, I'm going to never give him rest.
No, I'm finishing this project. I am finishing this project. Ain't nothing's going to stop me on this one.
You better. And that's the correct attitude to have, is nothing's going to stop me. Save Kingdom Come, of course. But, and hey, I mean,
now that point, we'll have plenty of time.
I was exactly going to say that. I don't believe God is a God of uncreativity or lack of joy. So I just think the stories are going to get cooler and cooler and more epic.
Oh yeah,
as we go into the kingdom, it's going to be awesome.
I want to find out. What Lewis has been up to this whole time. Honestly, like, he's probably done some cool stuff. Yeah, same thing with Tolkien. The whole thing.
Real. I mean, I've heard, like, and it's kind of interesting if you read it this way. The Book of Acts, right, in the Bible, the ending of the Book of Acts can be read as an open ending. As if to imply it's still being written. There's still more Acts of the Apostles or Acts of the Saints being written in heaven today. And
I never thought of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, there are ideas in Revelation of new books being given and New Testaments being revealed that I don't believe that we see any of those today. Obviously, I'm not Mormon, but I do believe in the kingdom to come, there will be an immense wealth of knowledge. We're told plainly in the book of John that um, just Jesus himself, let alone the Godhead as a whole, but just Jesus himself, if everything he did in his mere 33 years on earth, and even just his 3-year ministry, couldn't be contained. If the sky was a scroll, the oceans were ink, every tree was a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, the whole of the love of God could never be written. And that just gives me as a writer goosebumps. And I'm like, all right, put me in, coach. Like give me a pen that has the ink cartridge of an ocean, and I'll do my best. And would it work out? Would I write the love of God completely? No, because I can't. I'm human. But I would certainly try. And that's going back to the show now. That's where me and Matt are connected, is because we're both vehemently Christian, and our creativity is one of a faithful stance, and we love God, and from the love of God comes the love of our craft, because all love in humanity, in the world, starts with the love of God, because he is the sort of the origin, the son of love, if you will, the one that gives everything else meaning. And so I'm now going to get off of my soapbox for a second and let Matt properly introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he is writing, and how close he is to being finished. And I'm
We'll
very
see.
excited to hear. So Matt, go
Yeah,
ahead and take the floor.
well, I actually got a little bit of feedback on the first little chapter that
Mm-hmm.
I sent you a while back, and the funny thing is the feedback that came back was that this thing, the world building's bad and it needs a complete overhaul. I saw that, but like I didn't see that
Huh.
because if you understand the vision of what I'm writing, I think some of the inconsistencies people might notice are actually deliberate. I just need to signal that they are deliberate. So anyway,
Yes.
I'm actually like kind of encouraged, even with receiving negative feedback on this, because like I kind of understand where I'm going with this, and that's my first book, so like certain things I just can't fix. So we're just gonna get it done and get it over with and publish it out and see what happens. So I'm kind of more on that gung ho flow. But yes, to introduce myself properly, I am a Protestant monk. At least that's how I would describe myself lately. Over the years, basically, I am a member of a intentional Christian community that was started by a number of missionaries, kind of in the early '90s. And over the years, we have begun to see ourselves as a Protestant monastic order. So that's how I describe myself, as I'm a Protestant monk. Basically, what we do is we live on the same property together. We eat, work, and pray, and have lots of events together. And we basically just try to live out the Sermon on the Mount. Nothing particularly fancy. I tell people that if you come visit, you're going to find it that's disappointingly normal. As you can see, I'm just wearing any old shirt here, no fancy robes or nothing. We're just a bunch of families just trying to live out the Sermon on the Mount and love each other and, be a witness in the Celtic way. So that's what I am. And professionally, I work as in software. So I'm sure no one here watching your show is probably terribly interested in that part. But from recently, I started getting into writing, and I had a stroke of inspiration one night and thought, okay, this is the story that I want to write. So basically, I've been kind of whacking at this thing for, oh, gee, it's been a few years now, probably like 4 or 5 years. I've taken way too long for like a monetary return on it. But yeah, so working on a children's sci-fi that's kind of inspired by the principles outlined in Michael Ward's Planet Narnia book, with Lewis's idea of the kappa element and symbolism and such. So that's kind of where I like to think as a storyteller. I like to think of the meaning of individual symbols of a story. I like to think of the hidden themes and ideas that are going on under a story. So that's where I like to live. And the kind of story that I'm trying to write is one that's a little bit more than just, oh, this is fun action adventure story. I want to write something that's actually deeply meaningful and calls back to the kind of ancient principles you can find in the Bible, but also, just the eternal spiritual truths that you can find everywhere.
Right. And I think that's super important, to write stories that call us back to eternal truths
Mm.
of power and love and creation and these things. Planet Narnia is one of my favorite. I haven't read the book yet, but I like. I'm assuming it's based, and we've talked about it on the show a little bit before. I'm assuming it's based kind of on what Lewis does in the last battle, in the final book when the children reach Aslan's country, and it becomes this sort of version of heaven, right? It's
Hmm.
sort of Lewis's take on heaven almost, and it's also almost the new heaven and the new earth, and it's a really fascinating concept. And I do intend to read the Planet Narnia at some
I mean,
point,
I got to get to it too. Like, I'm familiar with a lot of the concepts because we at the Abbey here like talk about it all the time. But
right?
for me, I actually really do need just to sit down and read it straight through.
Right.
So even myself, who talks about it all the time, like I really need to get my head like properly wrapped around it. But I've read enough of Lewis to understand what's going on.
Right. I've been in that same kind of boat when it comes to a lot of the classics. I want to read a lot of these
Mm,
things. I read The Three Musketeers for the first time, I think last
mm,
year. That's a fantastic book. It's a great movie too. Don't get me wrong, but the book
mm,
is really good too. I've also read, or I am reading Thomas More's Utopia because
mm,
I wanted a more complete understanding of the beginnings of the ideals of socialism and communism and where they
mm,
come from. And a lot of people would argue that Utopia is the first, or maybe not the first, but it's one of the earliest and one of the best sort of proto socialist uh, works. And it's not necessarily, I don't think Thomas More was promoting what socialism has become today, but
yeah, when
it's
Marxism literally didn't exist yet.
right. Marxism didn't, but it was sort of the beginnings of it. And not to
Hmm.
get political because this isn't a political show, but this is a writing show. I'm reading it and I'm learning a lot of technique in the reading of it
Mm,
because I'm learning how the old masters wrote. And
mm,
granted they wrote
mm,
in Latin, and so in writing in Latin, they themselves were writing in the style of the old masters. So who are the old masters to the old masters? So I'm kind of reading and gleaning the ways of old, and I've been able to work much of that into what I'm writing now. And the point of that was I think it's important that we don't lose the old ways when we're bringing the new ways in. Uh,
mm,
like Christian monks, for example, when they would approach a new culture, they would write down the stories of these
right.
people. They would
That's actually why we
they
have
would
some of that stuff.
maintain right. They would maintain the cultures because they believed that every culture and every place was it had some spark of the divine left in it because if nothing else the people themselves were imago dei, and so if the people were imago dei there must have been something remnant of god in their cultures and their belief systems and all these things. And so it's important that we as readers and writers today go back and understand the old masters to better our craft today, to hone our craft. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
if you've seen my X feed, if you've been following me on X, you'll know that I'm not in the gatekeeping crowd of you must read voraciously to be a good writer. I do
Yeah.
believe you should be writing more than you're reading. In my opinion, I think reading should be done with specific intention as a writer to get to get the most for your
Mm,
craft out of what you're reading.
that's
I
interesting.
don't think you have to read like 100 books a year to be a good writer. I think putting a number on it's ridiculous. I saw a one of the big writing YouTubers. I can't or he's kind of a writing slash reading YouTuber, but he put out a video recently talking about the reading to be a writer idea, and one of the comments under his video I thought was hilarious. It said, "I'm a great writer. I'm just too busy reading to write anything." And that's it's hilarious, and I thought it encapsulated the argument that I have entirely because like I love reading, I love writing, but also I love writing more than I love reading, and
Mm,
so I'm going to tell these stories and you can't stop me, number one. But also, I'm going to get everything I can. I'm going to vampirize these books and suck
Mm.
all of the writing uh, skill and all of the writing talent that I can from these books, almost as if they were textbooks, and then use it for myself later on.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, if I may jump in,
please,
I believe Sir Roger Scruton, late Sir Roger Scruton, said that you're only ever reading or writing. Like you kind of don't have the headspace to do both simultaneously. And he's one who is a voracious writer and reader as a philosopher. So
right.
I think there's something right about that because I know for me, like I'm a terrible. Honestly, I am very slow reader. I have um, a rough draft from a friend of mine who is working on a fantasy novel, and I have to apologize to him because I'm just going through it way too slowly for him to get feedback. So yeah, like I'm a slow reader for sure, but I've also noticed like part of the reason I don't read a lot is because I'm focusing on actually getting this book done, right? So it is kind of it's a different discipline, and I think they do kind of cancel each other out a bit. So if you can do both at the same time, I'm impressed.
Frankly, if you can read great works of fiction and nonfiction and also write good at like full length novels while you're doing it, more power to you. You're a better artist than I am. But also, I like to think of other arts as someone who partakes in both the creative arts and the fine arts. I'm able to see them or to glean things from both to help the other. And so, because I'm a singer, because I love singing songs, I've taken that, and in my story, in I think the third chapter, there's a poem, a totally original poem that I've written, called um, "Rise, King of the West," but it's in Latin, so it's sung in Latin in the book, and so
Can you speak Latin?
I can speak only a little bit, and I can sing it better than I can speak it, because
Mm.
I've learned several songs in Latin,
Oh, okay.
and so this song in the book, it was heavily inspired by my love of singing, and vice versa. Several of the songs that I like singing are because I love their stories so much.
Mm.
There's a song called Nigankerdak by the same people who do a lot of covers of the Lord of the Rings songs. They have one of the most famous
Oh shoot, I may know who you're talking about.
yeah. They have one of the
Oh,
most famous covers
Clammy de
of
Profundis.
De
Clammy de Profundis.
yes, De
Those
Profundis.
guys are cool. Those guys are cool.
Great artists, and their song Nigankerdak is part of a four-part sort of epic that they wrote for, like, as an original story for their
Mm.
singing. And I love that first song especially. The second one's great too, but the first one's my love, because the story in it is so impactful, and it's still so poetic despite being fantasy. And I don't know how they did it. Like, they are masters of their art
I'm gonna have
of
to check that
poetry and
out.
singing. That please
I'm gonna
do.
have to check that out.
uh but the anyway, to get to my point, the the cross pollination, if you will, of my disciplines is what I'm talking about. And so, as a singer, I have to spend I have to spend more time singing than I do listening to music if I want
Mm.
to get better as a singer. Like, right now, or at least this weekend and last weekend, I've been practicing for a solo I want to earn in my choir. And to do that, I listen to the song through maybe once, and then the rest of the time that I'm listening to the song, I'm singing. I'm practicing my pitch, I'm practicing my dynamics, I'm working on timing, I'm working on cutoffs and startups and all these things that you have to do as a singer. But all of that time is spent singing. It is also spent listening to the book or listening to the song, but it's not spent just listening. It's spent listening and learning and singing. And so, what I'm doing as a writer is very similar. I spend usually much more time writing than I do reading, because I want to improve my craft as a writer.
Mm.
And
Mm.
like with my singing, am I sometimes also listening to audiobooks on or like in my car? Sure. Like I listen to, I'm listening through the um the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen R. Lawhead right now on audiobook. What, because I can't really write while I'm driving, can I? So I'm using that time to glean what I can from the book and vampirize it for my own writing. I I I don't think you can be the best version of yourself or of your talent or of your art if you don't consume the masters or if you don't learn from the masters. So um if I didn't listen to people like Peter Hollins, which, to be fair, Peter Hollins is a modern singer, so I don't know if people would like me considering him a master, but I do think he is one of the best male voices in the scene today, especially a cappella. If I didn't listen to him and listen to his music and sing along with him to try to gain things from what he's singing, or people like Ben Everson or yeah, Ben Everson, who's a Christian artist, or uh, even non-Christian artists like I can't think of Celine Dion is one that I can think of off the top of my head. Uh, whoever's saying whoever's saying in Frozen and Frozen 2 for Elsa.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
her.
I don't know.
Exactly. But whoever that was, she's a fantastic artist and her voice is immaculate. And so I'm learning a lot when I listen to her. And
Mm.
when I'm trying to sing her songs, even an octave down is still pretty tough for a tenor. So all of this is to say, you should be studying the masters, but you should be also practicing yourself.
Right.
The example I used in the car with my mother when I was driving her into school, because I'm sure she definitely cares about the online writing drama on X, because she's a teacher, so she definitely has so much care to give. But anyway, I was talking to her about this, and the idea that I used, or the sort of the uh, analog that I used, is if you have an artist, a traditional like painter, for example, someone who wants to be a famous painter, if they spend all of their time in the Louvre, eh, I mean, they might come out being able to paint a decent apple or something, but if they spend all of their time in the Louvre, they can study the masters all they want. But if they never put pencil to canvas or brush to canvas, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Literally, who cares? You're just some homeless guy at the Louvre at that point.
absolutely.
But if you then take what you learn at the Louvre, you take good notes, and you get inspired by it, you study them, and then you go home and try. That's the key, is you try and you try
Exactly.
again and then you try
Exactly.
some more, and also you show it to people. One of the only ways you get good as an artist is by getting rancid critique. And
That is so true. That is so true.
yeah, I mean, you have to, like, I I would, for example, if someone on uh I believe it was the this show Discord, someone noticed it. If someone hadn't mentioned that the audio levels were trash, I would have never thought about, leveling the audio and trying to get that
Right.
balance better, and learning the fact that I have to balance it for each guest. I can't just balance it for one guest and then that's perfect and it's going to be perfect for everybody else. So like your balancing, for example, is a much different balance than I had last week when I had Jessica and Secret on. And even still, I might learn something from this and improve the balance next week. And so that is what we have to do as artists. All of this rambling,
Yeah.
all of this soapboxing is just to say, if you're not trying and you're not showing it to anybody, literally who cares?
Right.
Because and more power to you, you might care, and that's cool too. But don't then come on Twitter or come on X or Instagram comments or whatever and start joshing people because you've read 14 quadrillion books and you're only 4 years old, and they're 30 years old trying to publish a book, but they've only read 40 books in their lifetime.
Right,
And
exactly.
like it's like, okay, cool, like you're a toddler who's read a billion books, but have you actually written anything? Have you actually put out anything that anybody cares about?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I want to expand on that because, if there's a very interesting essay that Lewis writes called, I don't remember, it's Meditation in Tool Shed. Highly recommended to people. Great, uh, it's a great metaphor for life in general, but also storytelling. What in that essay, he walked into an old tool shed on his property, and he noticed that there was a beam of light coming from a crack in the door. And so, because it was dark inside, there was lots of dust. He could see the light easily, right? Then he steps into it, and then he could see outside with the sun and the trees moving and all that jazz. And Lewis took that as a metaphor for understanding truth, where you can look at a thing and then you can be inside the thing, and then
Yeah,
when you're inside the thing, that's when you truly know something. Like that's how religion works, right? You can look at it from the outside, but not until you're inside the religion, until you're doing the practices and you're saying the words and you're living the symbolic patterns of the religion, can you really understand what it's really about, right? And that's the same thing with you're talking about with writing. The only way you can get better at something is by actually doing it. You have to be in the light and using your body to train yourself to do the thing, right? You have to literally embody the truth that you're trying to create or express. I might say that's probably a little better way to say it. In order to be a good writer, you have to write. If you want to be a good violinist, you have to pick up a violin and try to play. If you want to be a good singer, you have to actually sing. You can't just watch all this extra stuff here because that's looking at the light. You have to be inside the light in order to get all that skill.
absolutely right. And if I can, just sort of um, clip farm a little bit here, the you as a writer, you need to remember that there's more to writing than just a movie scene or a video game cutscene or even a
Right.
video game level. And so this is why you should read something sometimes. And especially if you only have a little bit of time to read the masters. Look up any kind of Western canon list and read from the top down. Start at number 1 and work your way down if you can, because that number 1 book's the most important. And likely in a lot of canon, you'll find things like the Venerable Bede, or you'll find Le Mort d'Arthur, or you'll find Tolkien or Lewis, and these people are considered the masters for a reason. Study them and understand why they're called masters, and begin to emulate them and embody them, as my friend said. And part of that, and I think this is something a lot of people miss if they're just coming from like watching things or playing things,
Mm.
there's more than two senses, right? There's more than sight and there's more than sound.
Mm.
There are
That's interesting.
there is smell, there is taste, there is touch. And these things can be communicated, written much more impactfully than they can be communicated over a screen. For example, if you want a really good example of this, do yourself a favor and go read chapter 2 or chapter 3 of The Eye of the World, which is the first Wheel of Time book, and pay attention to how the characters react to Moraine Damodred when they meet her for the first time, and also, more so than that, rather, even more importantly, focus on how they react to the coin that she gives them. They
Hmm.
don't just look at it. They don't just see what it is. They feel it. They touch it. They understand it. And that's written on a level that you can't get through a visual medium. And I can prove that because if you then go and move to the scene in the Wheel of Time TV show in the first episode where they portray Moraine meeting the boys and giving them the coin, it's it's night and day different. All
Mm.
you get in the TV show is them sort of, oh, that's cool, and it's a coin they put in their pocket and they forget about it. But in the book, there's so much more going on.
Mm.
I think the entire interaction, or the first interaction that Rand and Matt have with Moraine is like three chapters, or not 3 chapters, 3 pages long, whereas it's only like maybe a couple dozen seconds in the TV show. There's just so much more that you can glean out of it. There's so much more that you can get out of
Mm.
it if you read it, as opposed to if you see it. And that's
Do you prescribe to the idea that listening to an audiobook is the same as reading it? Or do you think there's like something mechanically different when you're actually holding a book and reading words?
there is something mechanically different, and it's not so much, I don't think, about the medium but in which you are imbibing the story, but rather it's your intention behind it.
That's interesting.
a
That's
lot of
interesting.
a lot of people will read, I'll put it in quotes because we're talking about the word read there, will read audiobooks with the intention of having something on in the background while they're at the gym working out, or
Right.
cleaning their house, or going on a walk, or doing something else. I
Hmm.
think if you have the intention of reading the book and you need, like so for example, if you're ADHD, one of the best ways I know of, if you're ADHD, to consume a book is to be holding the book in your hand and flipping the pages while you're listening to the audiobook, because you're consuming it in 3 senses. You're consuming it auditorily, you're consuming it visually, and you're consuming it tactilely or tactilely.
That's interesting.
And that's
Hmm.
one of the best ways to consume a book, in my opinion. Uh, if you struggle with focus, if you don't struggle with focus and you're able to just sit down with a good book in your hands, reading it raw off the page is the best, because of what I've gotten from the Wheel of Time. Right, the first time I read the Wheel of Time, I intentionally told myself, okay, I don't want to rely on audiobooks as a crutch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the first Wheel of Time book, The Eye of the World. And I did. I read it manually in my hands. And it took me about, I think, 3 months to get through it, because it's a big book and I'm a slow reader like you are. But I got through it. But then the rest of them, I just, I turn on the audiobooks and blast it through them. Don't get me wrong, I got a lot out of the audiobooks, and there were some fantastic scenes in the audiobooks that I can remember very vividly. But one of the things that I found myself disappointed in is when I was sort of consuming media post series and listening to people's reviews of things and um, favorite scenes and whatnot. I found myself not being able to remember things and not being able to sort of fully embrace what they were talking about and the hype of things. Um, but now I'm rereading the series, and this is kind of a plug for a show that I'm doing here on my channel. And if you're on X, this won't be on X, so go subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/abtimothyauthor. It should come up, or if not, just search me up on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll find it. But go subscribe there, because I'm going to be doing a series once a month with JM Goodman, who was actually in the Discord earlier. And me and him are going to be going through the Wheel of Time books. I don't know why I held up Taliesin. It's not a Wheel of Time book, but we're going through the Wheel of Time books half a book at a time, once per month. And so he isn't necessarily the biggest fan of it. I love the books. And so we'll have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss, and our ideals will clash. That plug aside, I've been rereading the book, and I am getting so much more from the physical read through the second
Mm.
time than I did the first time I
Interesting.
read it. Even I guess the reread of it is helping, right? Because I know a lot of things that I didn't know before. So some words and some ideas and some phrases just sort of went in one eye and out the other, so to speak, in my
Right.
first read through and aren't this time. The main thing I can think of to represent that is in one of the first 50 pages of the book, Robert Jordan name drops the White Cloaks. And the White Cloaks are a constant thorn in the adventuring party's side for the rest of the series. And so if you don't know who they are on your first read through, it's just kind of like, oh, that's an organization in the world. Cool. But then on your second read through, you get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that if you're paying attention, and this is getting back to my original point, if you're being intentional with your reading, if you're studying the masters to improve your craft, you'll catch things like that.
Right.
You'll catch the fact that when they're stopped on the road to Baerlon, or no, I think they meet them first in Baerlon. When they get to Baerlon and the children from the two rivers first meet the White Cloaks, you might be able to then put together, like 3 or 4 chapters earlier when you first heard the name White Cloak, to now, oh, they're real. Oh, they're an actual group of people that we're going to have to worry about for the rest of the series. And that can be rewarding. That can be helpful as an author. Because it gives you this concept of setting things up, right? Man, this episode is just me yapping, huh?
I mean, it's very interesting here, but like,
yeah.
I mean, I wanted to, but I mean, if I could jump in though, like,
Please.
Roger Scruton said something very similar about music, actually. Like, he didn't think that you should have lots of music even on in the background, like the kind of soundtrackification of everything, right? He thought that you should really sit down and properly listen to it as an experience. And so it's kind of the same point. Like, even today, oddly enough, I was playing a board game with my buddies earlier today, and I put on music. Like, I'd offer, hey, like, it's like a space game, so like I put on some music for that. But I remember thinking to myself, I actually don't want to have silence right now, even as we're thinking about this. And what's so fascinating about that is, like, I wouldn't say like I'm addicted or anything like that, but the fact that we don't ever have silence is kind of an indicator that we aren't aware of things that are going on around us, like the voice of God or the Holy Spirit or stuff, because you need silence for him to talk. And it's the same way with, reading, right? In order to get what you, the most goodness out of a book, you have to actually sit down and put your attention, your full attention onto the thing. I think there's like, one of the concepts I talk about even in symbolic language is that you become what you put your attention to, right? If you're trying to be like Christ, you're putting your attention on Christ, you become like Christ, right? You're trying to be a good football player and you're starting in what the football player is doing. You eventually become that, right? The thing you focus on is what you eventually become. And it's the same exact point that you're bringing out here.
It absolutely is. And it was said much more succinctly and fantastically. Good job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't have put
the consequence of being an armchair theologian as a monk.
Yeah, I also consider myself an armchair theologian. The two things that I'll engage in on X is writing discourse and religion. So,
all right.
Yeah, so I'm a Baptist, of course, and Baptists have a lot of opinions. We're very opinionated people. So, we love Baptists though here.
You and I kind of bonded over like just bashing on Calvinism though, so like that was
true. Because I'm not a Calvinist, but I'm not. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not an Arminian.
I'm not an Arminian, right? Interesting.
There is a middle
very
path.
Interesting.
There is a middle path.
Yeah, I find this super fascinating too, because like I am like on the far end of that. Like I consider myself open theist, so like I'm even worse.
Oh no.
That's why I love talking to you about this stuff, because I find it like super intriguing.
Right. And that's why I'm excited. Small plug. I'm excited to be on your show eventually when that situation gets settled and you guys.
Yeah, we're we're still figuring some things out. Unfortunately, like
No,
I and my
no
co-host
worries,
got sick, and so like we just haven't had any
dude.
time to
Yeah,
do
that
it. So yeah,
stinks.
we're gonna get you on. We're gonna get you on. It's gonna be fun.
Cool. But yeah, so to kind of bring things back around and sort of wrangle the show a little bit here, because we've been talking a lot about some cool stuff. Um, Spring, as this is the spring special, and we mentioned earlier, spring is all about life, and it's all about the renewing of life after a dead winter. So I want to ask you, because you are the author on my show today, or well, one of the authors on my show today. I want to ask you, Matt. You've talked on the show a little bit before about personifications in your world of
Mm,
metaphysical concepts like death, like Anubis, for example. And Christ, I would argue, is the ultimate personification of life. He quite literally
mm.
calls himself the way, the truth, and the life.
The life, yeah.
And no man comes unto the Father but by him. So I want to know, in your world, this fictional world that you're creating for your universe, where these metaphysical things come to life in the stars, where does life show up, or does it? And
That's
how is
man,
that
that is
interwoven?
like I love talking about these sort of things because this is actually one of the interesting one of the more hidden elements that doesn't reveal itself towards the end actually. But maybe I should give like just like very brief explainer of like what the story is just so
Yeah,
the reader's not
totally.
too long. Okay, cool. So basically, it's a planet of space elves. They've lost their son, and the main character is like a little slave girl who aunt disappears, and they're basically this race of they're immortal as so forth, um, and basically her aunt disappears underground. She's not sure where she is, but then she has a dream by some kind of being who kind of teaches her how to escape her slavery underground, and as she does that, she then reaches the surface of the planet and discovers, oh, actually, we have a new star and I've somehow this has been hidden from me. And so the story kind of unfolds from there because they find out that the creature who's guarding their planet is a personification of death. And so why is a personification of death on a planet of immortal beings, right? That's kind of one of the tensions of the book. So, but how the mythology works is that these abstract concepts of like death, life, and so forth have embodiments when they come down to Earth, you might say. So the character Anu or Anubis, as you might say, because he's the same. It's the same character effectively. When he appears on the planet, he appears as a black dog because that is the symbol that makes the most sense in given in the to the elves basically the Astra. So this is based on the idea that the main duality in symbolism is heaven and earth. It's not like matter and energy, right? The symbolism duality. When things are in heaven, they're abstract concepts, right? It's meaning without matter or physical expression. But down on earth, it's matter without meaning, right? It's just dirt. It doesn't have anything. It's when you combine those two things together do you find meaning? For example, a chair has meaning because we have shaped the earth into a thing that becomes useful for us and we impart a name to it, right? Adam's naming the animals in the garden, right? He's giving meaning to the lifeless matter. All right, a bunch of esoteric symbolisms kind of stuff. So let's get on to your question then, life. So in this story, life is actually expressed with a peacock, or rather a peahen. The reason why is that in ancient times it was thought that peacock flesh doesn't decay. I don't think that's actually true in reality, but that was just one of the things that they thought. So the peacock kind of represents immortality and life for that reason. It's also a symbol of Christ, as you may know, because the peacock is a creature that is frequently depicted as killing a snake. At least if you go to India, actually, you can find images of a peacock killing a snake, actually. So once again, it's actually a symbol of Christ. And I don't know about this, but peacocks do have lots of eyes, obviously, on their tail feathers. I don't know if that has something to do with the Christological symbolism, like a guardianship or something, but you could certainly interpret it that way. So in this story, Puvo is actually the life goddess, you might say, and she is represented by a peacock. And at one point during the story, when she helps someone, she is represented like that with feathers, right? And she actually takes care of someone by sheltering them from the heat by putting her wing over them. Again, another biblical reference there, right? I was like a mother hen or something. Maybe you can quote the scripture better than I can, but you probably can. Everyone can figure out what the reference I'm talking about is. So anyway, so I use that symbolism as a metaphor for life, and then eventually, when that character actually meets that life figure in heaven at one point. But what's interesting there is that it's harder for her to describe what the creature is, because when you're in heaven, these things are more abstract. So it's, there isn't a physical embodiment that you can latch on to. So another interesting element. I hope that answers your question. But that is one way where the symbolic elements of spring and life do kind of come out.
Sure. And just so for anyone who's curious, I'll probably put it up on the screen so you guys can see it. The passage he was referencing was Matthew 23:37. It says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often I would have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Right. So that's something kind of cool, is that life is sometimes rejected by humans. We're offered life, we're offered good things, but we turn it down because of pride or because of greed, or
that's the interesting paradox. It requires a death, right? Yep. To get the life, it requires a death, and that's actually the core symbolic pattern of the book I'm writing.
Well, that's the core symbolic pattern of history, I think.
It's true.
We, as humans, we've always understood that life comes from death. We've going back to the earliest possible story of humans interacting with each other and giving and desiring life, so to speak. The thing that is accepted by God is the sacrifice of a new lamb, of the purest lamb that Abel had in his flock. And what's not accepted is the non-living things, the fruit of the field that Cain offers.
Right.
And so this idea of life coming from death is very real, and even pagan cultures have understood it for millennia. All these ideas of child sacrifice and animal sacrifice and all of these things, with the hope that, well, maybe if I give up enough, if I give of myself or give of my livelihood enough, then we'll have more later, or we'll have more prosperity, or we'll win a war, or what have you. And so it's always been misguided. And even the ones that were properly guided, like Israelites sacrificing the lambs and the bulls in the Old Testament, it's all pointing to Christ. Now right. We have the final sacrifice. Now we have the sacrifice once delivered for all, as the Bible tells us. And so,
yeah, exactly.
As writers, we need to look at these symbols and these cycles and these ideas and utilize them to tell deeper stories.
Bring it back in. Exactly. And that's where you get meaning.
Yes, 100%. And I like that, because like when you were talking about like the peacock, I was like, oh, I haven't really heard of that myself, but okay, I believe you. And then when you mentioned India, I'm like, oh, that's why I probably haven't heard of it very much, because I haven't studied much non-European culture. I probably should, but there's,
I don't know.
But this idea of it being from India is cool. Like, for example, in the Wheel of Time, which is as anyone who's watched this show for more than one episode realizes, this is the Wheel of Time show with A.B. Timothy. But many of the things in the Wheel of Time don't come straight from European culture, like the very turning of the wheel, or the Ouroboros snake. A lot of these things come from either Near Eastern or further Eastern cultures. And, and the symbol at the heart of the wizard culture, which is the Aes Sedai in the Wheel of Time, is the flame of Tar Valon, which is later revealed if you're paying really close attention, because it's never, I don't think it's ever actually explicitly described. And if you're still reading the books, uh, Tim Robert, if you're listening to this, you might want to turn the show off for now and come back to it when you've read more of the books. But the it's never really explicitly described. But the Flame of Tar Valon and uh the claw, or the dragon's claw, which is marked on people's door to call them evil, basically, are two halves of the symbol of the dragon. And the symbol of the dragon is
Ah, that's
clearly
interesting.
the yin yang symbol.
That's
It's, I think, the
interesting.
only time it's like
Hmm.
explicitly mentioned or kind of divulged in the art, at least, is on the cover for Path of Daggers. The cover
Hmm.
for Path of Daggers has the banner of the dragon flying behind Rand, and it is that yin yang symbol
Interesting.
of the white half going up like a flame, and the black half coming down like a dragon's claw. And so that, to get back to what we were talking about, that idea doesn't come from European culture. It comes from a Far Eastern culture, but it was utilized in one of the best Western novels ever written. So uh, don't be afraid to utilize other people's cultures. And again, if you're listening to this and all this religion talk is kind of off-putting to you, which I can understand, a lot of artists aren't necessarily religious. You still got to understand something. Meaning is derived in many different ways for many different people, and for the majority of people, for the majority of history, that meaning has been derived through religion. And so, if
Hmm.
you want to evoke meaning, to evoke deeper ideals in your art, you might have to dip your toes into religion, even if that's simply to critique it. Like Ursula K. Le Guin. I can't speak to Ursula K. Le Guin's religion because I don't know what she practiced, if she practiced. But she wrote a story called "The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas." It's a very famous short story. It's been talked about on many video essays by large content creators on YouTube. So many people have heard of it. I read it before it was cool. You know, I'm a hipster like that. But I had to read it for a literature class, and
Hmm.
the one of the very earliest things that our teacher described to us and helped us see was the word omelos is I believe the term is anagram for Salome. And Salome is actually two characters in scripture. One
Hmm.
character explicitly by name, and a different character according to Christian tradition. And so, even though the story of Omelos is not religious whatsoever, the very fact that she used the word Omelos invokes religion and forces
Hmm.
you, the
Hmm.
reader, if you understand what you're reading, to read it from a religiously informed viewpoint.
Interesting.
And
That's interesting.
and so, even
Yeah,
if you
that's
don't
fascinating.
like religion, even if you aren't religious yourself, you need to study these things if you want to write deeper and more meaningful stories.
Absolutely. And like to build on your point here,
Mm-hmm.
right? All we're simply saying is that the world is meaningful, fundamentally. And
Yep.
if you just approach your art from that perspective, you instantaneously create something that is far more interesting to me, as well as a lot of people who may not even be religious at all. I mean, why are we so captivated with Tolkien? I mean, he's got fantastic world building, right? Yes, that's true. But you can find all sorts of interesting books where they uncover all these different Catholic patterns that he wove into the story, even though there's no explicit religion in the story, right? And all of that
True.
seeps through and it arrests us and it grabs us because there's a meaning there, right? And I probably should avoid like doing the classic J.R. Tolkien versus George R. R. Martin comparison because we probably don't have time to get into any of that. But okay, I will just say those words and you can insert whatever discussion you want to have in your mind right now. But
Sure.
anyway, yeah. But you know the pattern, the symbolic patterns of even the yin and yang, the life and death cycle, you know, heaven and earth, and all those patterns that you can find in life, or the tree, it's another great one. they've always existed. They're just fundamental to how we humans operate in the world. Okay. So you don't even have to be religious to start understanding those ideas and picking at them. And the more you do so, you'll start finding truth. And the truth that you will find in those things, I guarantee will make you a better writer, a better storyteller, and just a better artist.
So true. Well, we could go on, and we inevitably will go on in other shows, I'm sure. But I think for now, we will sort of draw this to a close. We've been going for about an hour. And so, yeah, this is sort of the whole point of this show is to keep your interest peaked in creativity and giving you suggestions and ideas as to how you can inspire yourself to keep going and things to look into. Like I think him and I have both mentioned several interesting things that you might be curious enough about to go and research and go and study and keep drawing from to utilize your creativity.
Yeah, always follow your curiosity. That's like the easiest way to keep
That's
the beacon lit.
huge.
Just follow your curiosity, and it's
So
always
true.
something fruitful that way.
All right. Well, for now, Matt, if you'd like, go ahead and plug your information and your socials and all that good stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, so I do write and run a religious podcast with my brother at the monastery. It's called The Circle Dwellers. You can go find us on YouTube. We haven't published anything recently, as I mentioned before, because we got sick and some stuff came up. So we're going to try to be picking that up soon. But there's a decent backlog for you to go check out. We talk about all sorts of interesting things, anything from aliens to why veganism is stupid. But also lots of theology and discipleship issues. So, whether you're Christian or you're at least just religiously curious, it's a fantastic time. You can go check us out. If you want to follow me specifically, I am on X, where I basically just post random shenanigans about programming or writing or, anything that comes up to my mind. I try to be interesting and thoughtful here, but, who knows? The low quality posts are abundant on the internet, and mine is no exception. So, anyway, you can follow me on there. I am writing like I said, a children's fantasy sci-fi novel. Thank you for your kind words, Al. That's fantastic and super encouraging. But if you follow me on Twitter, I will send you the first chapter. I got that idea from you, so I have to credit you where credit is due. So yeah, give me a follow. I'll send you the first chapter. I think you'll like it. It's pretty darn good if I do say so myself, but who knows? If it's terrible, tell me, because then I can fix it.
Exactly. You can't get better if no one tells you you're bad. So, Emperor's new clothes, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, definitely go follow my good friend Matt here. He's a friend of the show. He's one of the OGs. He's been here since before we were even on YouTube.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Al. I'm just like,
Yeah,
this is fantastic. I love talking to you about this stuff.
it's super fun having you on. We don't always get to have one-on-ones, but it's super cool that we got to have it this time. If you would like to follow him and see his material, links to both his podcast and his X will be in the description below. Go and do that, especially following him to get that DM'd free chapter is well worth your time. And if he forgets to DM it to you, like I have not done many of my followers,
Yeah, just text.
reply to any of his posts, and he will more definitely see your reply. Same thing with me. If you go and follow me on x.com/abtimothyauthor, you will you will receive a DM asking if you like your free chapter, because some people have gotten their free chapter and been very crass with me about it. So you will be asked, but please go and follow me there and receive that if you'd like. Otherwise, as I talked about sort of at the top of the show, go support the Kickstarter. It's in the description below. The book, The Shards of Arthur's Shield, which is a classic style sword and sorcery fantasy adventure story. Very clean story, very classic, very worth your time to read, is available right now if you're listening after the fact, or tomorrow if you're listening live on Kickstarter.com. That link is top of the description below and will be for the whole month. Please go and support that. Even on the lowest tier, it's just $1. It's called The Noble Farmer, because that's all you can give, and you'll still even get a shout out right here on the show. And I appreciate the support, and thank you all for showing up. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and do all those fancy YouTube/Spotify things. Rate the show if you're on Spotify, and thank you all. And remember, as you go about your week, keep the beacon lit.